help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. But we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and welcome to the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. We are at the HQ. I am here with Steve Carlin. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Welcome to Texas. It's spring. It's 83 degrees today.
It is very much not like home.
Most people would say that and be depressed. You're celebrating it, so that's
couldn't be happier.
Another disturbing insight into your psychosis. We are in our HQ doing a bunch of having a lot of secret meetings. Don't tell the DOJ, and we are also recording some podcasts. So you'll see a couple of looks on the podcast if you're watching on video of this studio. We do a lot in this studio. If you've subscribe to the YouTube channel, as you should. A lot of you subscribers had a benefit last week because we had our friend Mark Houck on the podcast, and he is unfortunately no stranger to the DOJ or the FBI. Thank you for all of those who have written in and given your support of Mark and have left comments in that. If you did not catch that episode that came out last week, the day that this podcast comes out is Tuesday, March the 14th. But if you subscribe to the YouTube page, you got that Mark Houck podcast one day early.
Yeah, that's a benefit for all of the podcast or all the videos in general, not just the video podcast, but also any of the videos. It's an opportunity to get the first exclusive access.
And we have a little exclusive access today because this is a juicy topic. It's almost a little bit of a part two to the Mark Houck podcast. We are covering, so in his trial, Mark Houck's unbelievable landslide victory, what came out in discovery that we now have that today we will share with you are the eight revelations of that may cause a revolution from Planned Parenthood's Escort training guide.
Yeah, if you've been, not every Planned Parenthood has these, but many of you, if you've been out to your local 40 Days for Life vigil, they've got these escorts. They're wearing the shiny vests, and they're there to escort the woman from her vehicle to Planned Parenthood or escort the woman from the sidewalk, down the sidewalk, into the doors of that abortion facility. And Planned Parenthood is training these escorts, but as you're about to find out, not very well.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. It's good. Especially if you participate in 40 Days for Life, which, by the way, right now is going on in a record 604 cities, largest Lent campaign ever. We're going to reference Bruce Love a little bit today. So Bruce Love is the guy who was cussing at Mark Houck's son. It was just, you got to go listen to last week's podcast. You got to go listen to one of our best ever, according to us. But he was treated much worse than we originally thought. Of course, he couldn't talk about it till he got out. But in the podcast, you know, Bruce Love, we don't beat up on people, and he's a Planned Parenthood escort. We've dealt with a million different escorts, but I've only dealt with two guys who are like Bruce. They've been there for 20 years. They're never nice. And I asked Mark that. I was like, was Bruce ever nice? Like, I mean, people were rude to me. Abby was rude to me. A lot of people cussed me out or whatever, but I remember the director here in this building, the closed Planned Parenthood. The director before Abby, like I was out there on a monsoon one time, and she drove by, and she said, can I take you home? You really don't need to be out here. It was during the first 40 Days for Life campaign. It was October of 2004, and it was insane. I probably shouldn't have been out there. We were like in a tornado warning, but Pre-iPhone, Steve.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We were young.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Inexperienced.
Was MapQuest going to tell you that there's a tornado? So I have an atlas. So I really shouldn't have been up there. But I could tell she was worried about me. And I was 19 years old, and she was in her 40s, and probably was like, I don't like these kids, but come on. I think she genuinely was concerned about me. Bruce Love's the kind of guy, he was like praying that you get struck by lightning. And that came out last week. He's like, the guy was always a jerk. And last week, we shared on the podcast, because we're into details on this podcast and accuracy, that there's another Bruce Love. It couldn't be more appropriate that
The Bruce Love?
the Bruce Love, not the Bruce Love that harasses children and all that stuff in Philly. The Bruce Love is an actor, not well known. I'll reveal that. His best movie, his most well-known movie, appropriately, Water Rats. Did you see it?
No, this is also the first time possibly on the 40 Days for Life podcast where I'm proud to not have seen the movie. Though I hope that you have made plans to see Cocaine Bear.
You know how the 90s were. So Water Rats, oh my word. Water Rats is, it's in the 93, I think.
Okay.
So, Jurassic Park. You've got some big 90s movies. You haven't seen any of them. We're eventually going to get to that on the podcast. You've got all these hits. Water Rats was not one of them.
It was neglected by the Academy at awards season.
You got all the Lethal Weapons. You've got Braveheart. You got Saving Private Ryan. You've got A Few Good Men. You've got some just great Forrest Gump.
Tommy Boy.
Tommy. Oh, the classics. Shawshank Redemption. All these. Water Rats didn't cut it, starring Bruce Love. So, we don't make fun of people's names, but if you curse at children, look, you're on.
Open season.
Okay, before we get to the 8 revelations of this training from Planned Parenthood, Steve has unbelievable news. It has nothing to do, I shouldn't say that. I guess it's not a good secular announcement. I think it is God's will. And that announcement is what?
Buc-ee's, the famed gas station chain, which has, hundreds of gas pumps and cheap ice and the cleanest bathrooms in all of America.
And like $14,000 barbecue grills.
If you are in a state like I currently am, but I'm about to not be in, if you're from a state that does not have Buc-ee's, the best way that I can think to explain it to people is if you need something, they probably don't have it. But if you don't need it, they have lots and lots of it.
And it's glorious.
It's the I had my red Buc-ee's cup featured on one of the episodes of the podcast. So they are coming to Wisconsin. At least they're seeking zoning permission to do so, and I can't wait.
40 Days for Life has a great relationship with Buc-ee because we have, as you know, we've had the symposiums in Houston a few times. And we do, you bring in former Planned Parenthood workers. We've had Ramona speak. We've had Abby speak. You had Ruth in Canada who shared about escaping Saudi Arabia, going to Canada, leading a 40 Days for Life campaign. All these beautiful things. And what steals the show at the symposium is from the hotel on the way to our HQ where we are now, we stop at Buc-ee's so our wonderful local leaders can go into Buc-ee's, and then that's all they talk about for the following year. It wasn't the training or how they learned how to save more babies. It was Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is clean.
Yes.
Buc-ee's has like 114 different hand sanitizer dispensers. They have barbecue. They make homemade jerky. They make all sorts of sweets. The sugar-covered pecans. You say pecan? What do you say?
Pecan.
Yeah. The sugar-coated pecans, the sugar-coated cashews, they have fudge. There's nothing wrong with Buc-ee's. Buc-ee himself is a beaver. I'm sure we put it on the screen. He's their mascot. But the fact that Buc-ee's is going to Wisconsin, this is like saying there's not going to be winter in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's a fact. I think the first time I ever heard of Buc-ee's, you took me there when I was new on the 40 Days for Life team, and I said, "What is Buc-ee's?" And you said it's like a cross between a gas station and a Six Flags.
But they don't allow 18-wheelers, which you can imagine like the business pitch of that, like half the market on the interstate, you're not going to have it. But they don't do it, and it's genius because it's the destination. If you're driving far, the first one is between Houston and San Antonio. Now there's a lot of them, and
That's how they marketed it. They said when they were pitching it to our council or whoever, the zoning committee, they said it's a destination on the way to your destination.
Oh, perfect. And it is. But any kind of hot sauce, verde sauce, we could just go on.
Jerky, which almost killed me one time.
Yeah, so why don't you tell that story? We've told it on the podcast, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, this was my first Buc-ee's trip, and Sean and I stopped at Buc-ee's to fuel up for a drive all the way across Texas doing various pro-life and sidewalk outreach work that we were working on.
In August, and Sean said, you got to try their jerky. And, I don't know if by Texas standards it was hot or not, but from Wisconsin standards, it was very hot, very spicy. And it almost killed me. And I was gasping for breath. I was dying from the heat of this beef jerky. I was really worried about Steve.
Not worried enough to do anything about it.
No, I just kept driving. But we were in the middle of nowhere. We're in the hill country. It's 106 degrees. It was hot. I actually felt bad for you. I wasn't doing like the, hey, city boy from up north, is it hot enough for you? I didn't do all that. It was like, I'm miserable. I know you're miserable. You're not even used to it. It was hot.
And you're a bit of a germaphobe. So you had your bottle of water right there, and you just looked at me and you said, it's not you, it's me.
I couldn't give you any of my water, even though you were choking to death. And I struggled at that because I was thinking about your kids.
This is what the last Seinfeld episode was about, I think. They all went to jail because they wouldn't give that guy CPR.
That's true.
We took a chance that day.
I took a chance that day.
Yeah, and then we got to our destination. What was it, from Austin, maybe? Austin to College Station here?
Yeah, we were going from Austin to College Station, and there's a point where you hit on Highway 21, where it's a very dangerous road, and there's just nothing. There's nothing.
And we arrived at our destination, got our materials out of your trunk, and among those materials was a case of bottled water.
I forgot that earlier, anticipating us driving across Texas for 3 days and it being roasting hot and who knows, the car could overheat, I put a case of water in the trunk, and so Steve's near-death experience was unnecessary. That would have probably come out in the trial, that I had that water and I made the preparations.
Just like the Planned Parenthood sidewalk.
Exactly. Just
escort. Like
what we have to share today. It would have been through discovery. Of course, I guess they would have tried to say I tried to kill you because I knew the water was there, but I didn't give it to you, or I hid it in the trunk. But that was not the case.
I want to say we've done hundreds of these episodes now. I don't think we have ever had a finer segue than we did a smooth transition from Buc-ee's to legal discovery of the Mark Houck case.
I'm telling you. I know you could listen to other podcasts, but I mean, you're not going to get that kind of stuff. Okay, so the 8 revelations from Planned Parenthood's Escort Training Manual. This is gold because there's some stuff in here, just like the Mark Houck situation, where, okay, so his house is raided in September of 2022. So we knew it was bad. And we kind of had some details, and we had the photo. We knew that it was all nonsense about they don't have a SWAT team. They didn't go in with AR-15s. What are you talking about? This isn't a banana republic. And we're like, I don't know. We have all these photos of your guys holding AR-15. So we had all that stuff. But what we didn't know, what we couldn't say was they put him in shackles and they chained him to the table like an animal. And if we would have, in October, they would have said, oh, gosh, these guys are nuts. That's pro-life propaganda. And then Mark comes on the podcast like, yeah, they put me in shackles and they chained me to the table like an animal.
For hours on end.
I think there's a healthy balance of last week's podcast of, number one, he makes it tolerable because he's such a good guy. He's a holy guy. He's a family guy. And he's offering this up. He knew what this was. And, our Lord was persecuted. We're promised persecution. He said, all right, here we go. I think by the time he got the U.S. Marshals, he was like, this is getting out of control. But there are moments in the podcast where you're just sitting here going, I can't believe our government. And we know people in the FBI. I've talked to people in the FBI about how they handled Mark, and it's absolutely outrageous. And it was to intimidate all of you out there. That was the point of it. But go back and listen to it. But there's some rough moments. But what we got out of that case, besides a well-deserved embarrassment for the DOJ and the FBI, are these revelations. But I wanted to segue by saying some of this sounds made up in like propaganda, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's actually from their stuff.
And we'll link to the full training manual.
Yes.
This isn't top secret classified anymore. This came out and you can use it.
If you just can't handle the Cliff Notes, you need the full version. We're going to post it. It's like good Lenten reading. Honey, what are you reading? The Imitation of Christ. How about you? I'm reading Planned Parenthood's Escort Training Manual.
Hemingway, Faulkner, Walker Percy, Flannery O'Connor, Planned Parenthood.
That's right. Oh, Jane Austen. No, not Jane. Planned Parenthood. Okay, so let's start with this. This is a theme, and we've said they haven't been prepared post-Roe. And something happened to Planned Parenthood that we've actually pinpointed, which is Cecile Richards left. And when Cecile Richards left, and they parted ways, and they've had this revolving door at CEO, they're just not as professional as they used to be, and this reflects that.
You would kind of think that Planned Parenthood would maybe nationwide have it. This is for like Southeastern Pennsylvania. They're not even bothering to standardize their curriculum for training their escorts nationwide or worldwide. They're doing it all locally. And so Southwestern Pennsylvania comes out with their training program. And this is where I was surprised, because if you think about what we say about Planned Parenthood and the frustrations that we have going up against them, they've got the high dollar attorneys and public relations professionals, and everything is flashy, and these new Planned Parenthood facilities that they're building are gorgeous to put a veneer on the business of death that they traffic in. And you kind of think, gosh, their stuff is probably going to be really professional, really well done. And you get it, and it looks like it was designed in a Word document by someone who has no graphic design experience. There's at least some typos, grammatical errors in it.
It looked like Declan, like my 8-year-old
Yeah.
did it. Like, good job for an 8-year-old. Some grammatical errors, not Nike or or Adidas marketing, but it looks like an elementary school kid did it.
Yeah,
with all
exactly.
due respect to Declan.
And then I think one of my favorite things about it, and this is one of my favorite things about all of Planned Parenthood materials, we covered this on episode 42 of season 7 of the podcast when we went through Planned Parenthood's annual report. But they can't help themselves but to use this sort of like Marxist psychobabble. They're saying something and it's supposed to be inspirational, but you don't really know what it means. Here's a quote from it. In trying to encourage and exhort the escorts, by your presence alone, you are making a positive statement, one that demonstrates pride, patience, and strength. What does this mean?
To be fair, it sounds like what we would not want a local 40 Days for Life leader to say. Mm-hmm. Like, we want to say, you're offering hope, you're putting yourself in the situation by standing there that you can change the heart of a woman, that you could save a baby, and that you could close the abortion facility and make your community abortion free. Some kind of inspirational thing. This is, you're making a positive statement. This is like Tony Robbins. I mean, just...
As we've said before, the women getting abortions are not doing so because they're looking to make a statement. They're terrified. They're getting pressured into it by their boyfriend. They don't have whatever reason they're showing up. It's not because they want to make a political statement.
But doesn't somebody, if I'm pro-abort, if I'm pro-choice, and I want to be an escort, isn't that assumed that I think I'm making a positive statement? Can they go any deeper than that for me? I know it's a positive statement. I'm protecting choice. Can't they give me something on a rainy day? And the positive statement is just so weak. Of course they think they're making a positive statement. They want to volunteer for you. So
here's my theory about this document is some supervisor or manager at Planned Parenthood asks somebody to put this document together at like 4:15 on a Friday afternoon.
Okay. Hence the elementary school reference earlier. One that demonstrates pride, patience, and strength. Okay, so that's kind of the funny, superficial. It's really unprofessional. And
But it should give people confidence, I think, because again, we're up against this abortion giant and Planned Parenthood, and they're $500 million+ from the federal government. You would think they'd be able to do better than this. They're just winging it.
Yeah, they are. This is a big one, actually. They acknowledge in here, because I think with the media and their talking points, they can get away with abortion and reproductive rights and these sort of nice things. But escorts, it's a little bit of literally where the rubber hits the road. I mean, it's their version of what we're doing. We're out there praying, but hey, you got to go out to the abortion facility. It may rain. It may get hot. Somebody may throw something at you. All of these things. It's where the rubber hits the road. And so one of the revelations is in the training, they say abortion is traumatic.
Yeah. Well,
that's surprising to me.
That shows to me that they never... This is where you really see they didn't intend for this document to become public.
Well, that's what happens when, you go to court.
Yeah. Quote, escorts ensure that patients and visitors gain access into the clinic with the least amount of trauma as possible. So not without trauma. It's just assumed that trauma is part of the Planned Parenthood experience.
The least amount of trauma as possible. There's two things I read into that, because we've spent a lot of time and money on the best way to recruit volunteers and train volunteers. Okay, when you use the term the least amount of trauma, that's like us saying, 40 Days for Life is peaceful and prayerful, but you want to put yourself in the best position that's like least likely that you'll end up in prison. Mm-hmm. What? I just want to go and help save babies. No, we're doing that too, but we're just going to kind of angle this so you don't end up in the penitentiary for life, but it's only maybe 10 to 12 years. It's just the least amount of trauma. I thought abortion was freeing, and we're there to comfort women, and we're there to make them feel like, they have a place here, and we're welcoming. Trauma is a powerful word. I would never.
Yeah, where else would you see this? We've all got a bunch of kids. We've taken our kids to doctor's appointments for various things. They eat the penny. Like, that hasn't happened in my house, but I know people. They swallow the penny, or they've got, whatever illness.
We had a penny up a nostril years ago.
Oh, I want to learn more about this.
No, you don't. You don't. You should go watch Water Rats. Yeah, watch Water Rats before you have one of your kids stick a penny up their nose. It was bad, and this was early in the Sean and Mary Lisa family little expedition we're on. So yeah, I think we had like a 2-year-old.
So even then, okay. 2-year-old with a penny up the nose, the doctor, I'm assuming, did not tell you. Maybe you'll hear things like, we're going to administer this Novocaine at the dentist to make this as least painful as possible. Sometimes, as we've talked about, legitimate healthcare requires some pain, some cutting, some tearing, ultimately to heal. Nobody has ever said, this is how we're going to make your appendix removal as the least traumatic it can be. This is how we're going to make the penny removal the least traumatic. Nobody really assumes emotional, spiritual, mental health trauma with any other healthcare procedure.
That's one of the best points I've ever heard you make in your life. Because, and I didn't even think about it till you just said that. This is a what to say when. So this manual, this goes into abortion as healthcare. That's the best analogy that you made, because you would never use the word trauma to a patient unless you're a trauma surgeon and somebody's been in a car accident and they're, we're going to put you back together and we want the least amount of trauma. That's appropriate. That's it. That's the scenario. If you go in and they're like, we're starting your chemo and we want it to have the least amount of trauma on you. I mean, you never say that to a cancer patient. You don't say that to somebody with quadruple heart bypass surgery. So here's the what to say when question. And this is for the viewer or the listener. Your pro-choice buddy at work, or family member at Thanksgiving. We've talked about that uncle. Would you support abortion? Yes. Would you use the word trauma to describe any experience with abortion? No. It's a woman's choice. Is it traumatic? Would you Do you think you should say that a woman going in for an abortion should try to have the least amount of trauma as possible? No, this is a common surgery. It happens every day. Look, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, they haven't canceled this. Thank you, YouTube. They've just put this blurb below, like we're like recruiting Nazis or something. But they have this blurb below our video that says, abortion is a very typical termination of a pregnancy. You can read it right now. They're just normalizing it because that's what YouTube is for, is to give medical definitions. And so YouTube doesn't use trauma. You can look at the thing right now. They don't use trauma. I don't know of an abortion supporter that would ever say abortion and trauma in the same sentence in support of it. They may say, you think it's this big traumatic deal. It's not. In fact, the CEO of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards, remember, she said, I had an abortion. It was no big deal.
And here's one of the things I think is so important, because 3 or 4 times a year you'll get the headline, CBS News, CNN, NBC, new study shows that women don't regret their abortions.
Oh, yeah.
New study shows no lingering mental health issues following abortion. CNN can say it all day long, but Planned Parenthood right here, that's not what they're saying.
And by the way, in their manual, good for them because it's accurate. Because we have talked about the mental illness. We have talked about the suicide rate. We've talked about also the infertility of women who have gone through an abortion. It is traumatic when you don't shove off women who regret their abortion and you listen to them. You will hear that what Planned Parenthood is saying is actually accurate. They don't mean it in that way. They probably shouldn't have put it in the manual. It was probably written at 4:15 on a Friday afternoon, but it is accurate. Abortion is traumatic. I'm shocked that that is in here. I'm glad that it's in here. It should give you confidence as the listener, the viewer, that they're not well run. I know we've said that a lot, but that matters. That all this nitpicking, it's like, well, why do we care what the CEO does? Because it matters, because we're trying to get rid of them. We're trying to have them go out of business, and they just had a lot of their market taken away with the overturning of Roe, and they don't have good leadership at the top, and they're struggling. So that's why it's important. And when you see things like this, that looks like it's poorly done by a not very well-run small business, and they get $500 million a year from our government, and they don't have a PhD English writer who just writes their manual for them and gets it proofread in a day. I mean, that is shocking to me. We do that. I mean, all of our stuff is professionally proofread, and we're like a pro-life group, right? We're not getting $500 million from the government every year.
I'm sure it was an oversight.
I'm sure, yes.
Innocent mistake.
It's total mistake. They had the wrong account number. Okay, number 3. This is great. Compliments to you. Planned Parenthood doesn't want its escorts talking with 40 Days for Life volunteers.
No, they don't. The presence of counter-protesters, they say, has the potential to incite what they call antis. This it's very professional language. Antis. We're anti-choice. I don't know. Anti-abortion.
We're antis?
That's what they call us. They call us antis. I've been called worse.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Has the potential to incite antis, increase tensions, and ultimately create a more hostile environment for our patients. End quote. Here's the story that I thought of when I was looking through this.
Bruce Love didn't read this. He started cursing at Mark's kid.
He was just bitter that his movie didn't get the acclaim that it deserved.
We're going to have to do a whole show on water rats. Keep going.
So when I think about this, the first time I ever met Haywood, he came down for a rally that we did in Madison, Wisconsin, and there were some abortion supporters that were across the street from us protesting us, making a lot of noise, as they tend to do. And Haywood said basically, like, I'm going to go over and talk to them. I'm black. They don't see past that. They'll think I'm on their side.
They don't see past that. That's definitely a line that came from Haywood's mouth.
So he went across the street, started talking with them. Guess what? They didn't see past that.
Just a black guy.
And they assumed he was on their side. He started talking to them about abortion, how he did abortions, what abortion is, what it looks like. And one of the little communist demonstrators started to want to learn more. Like, they're involved in conversation. The eyes are being opened, and they were very quick. The more experienced communists yanked that guy away and brought the girl out of the conversation too. They pulled them both away. because they didn't want their eyes to be open to the truth. It's not about inciting pro-lifers. We don't get incited. That's not what we do. We've got a statement of peace. This is about making sure that the veil of ignorance remains firmly in place over those eyes.
So Haywood walks over like Moses, and intern Kami is starting to rethink her position on abortion. She's a woman, the intern?
I think there's a man and a woman.
Okay.
Both young, like, college students.
Okay, so the little Kami couple who were getting into it, they're all excited, you know, they're college students. Haywood starts talking, which everybody listens when he talks. As any former abortion doctor, you listen. So they're getting into it, and then experienced PhD, please tell me they're a baby boomer.
No, it's probably a grad student, I would say.
Our baby boomer listeners who dislike the baby boomers more than we do, they'll be disappointed that it wasn't a baby boomer. But the experienced communist takes the little intern commies and gets them away because Haywood is making sense.
Yeah, and I think that's why Planned Parenthood's escort training manual here, that's exactly why they don't want even small talk, they say. They don't want it, shut it down. There's no room for dialogue or understanding.
You know, I think one of the reasons that's in here too, to your point, Steve, there's high turnover with escorts. A lot of people call them death escorts, but then some people don't know what that is. But that's what they're doing. High turnover. I mean, for us, it's life and death. You go out there, you can save a life. I mean, I've had some physicians participate in 40 Days for Life, and they say with their line of work, they're like, I think I've actually saved one life in my whole life. And I've had other doctors say, I've never saved a life. I don't do that I've never been in that position. But what else can you do unless you're a doctor where literally you could save the life of someone else? So it's just this, who cares that a cold front's coming in? Who cares that it's raining outside? We just have all this that lifts us up. And, you know, not to mention serving our Lord who loves these children much more than we ever can. So the motivation's endless. We have endless fuel. But if you're pro-choice and you're mad at Kavanaugh and you're like, I am going to stand up for women, I'm going to get rid of all these evil old white guys who are trying to lock women up for having abortions, and I'm going to go out there, that just doesn't last very long when it gets hot or it starts raining. And that's what we see. And I think that's why this manual is so not inspirational at all. It should be more inspirational. You can read the whole thing, as we mentioned. You're not going to be inspired. But they're using words like trauma, and they're telling them not to engage in us. It's the opposite of our training, Steve.
It is the exact opposite. And here's something that I thought was pretty fascinating from it. Planned Parenthood wants its escorts not only to not interact with us, but to not interact with the pro-abortion demonstrators and protesters who are out there protesting our prayer vigils. Which is interesting because sometimes, you know, I hear a lot of people, I talk with a lot of leaders, like, we got these protesters, they're out there, they've got their signs, they're ringing bells, they're making noise. I think awesome. Planned Parenthood's paying them to be out there. Planned Parenthood wants them to go away too, get out of town.
I've shared this too, but I know I told you, when I was in Rochester, New York. Okay, so the pots and pans, and that was crazy. That was number 3 craziest times I've ever been at a vigil. They're banging the pots and pans in my face. They have capes. I didn't know, besides Halloween, or that one Seinfeld episode where they cover capes. George Costanza's dad's lawyer wears a cape. And it's odd, so they cross to the other side of the street. So besides that, you just don't see capes. They had capes, and they had other flowing items that, anyways. It was weird. Planned Parenthood director comes out and tells them to go away. She didn't tell us to go away. And she gave me a look, because I had just spoken, and they were like screaming in my face, and it was raining, and it was 30 degrees. And she didn't say it, but she gave me this look like, I'm sorry about this.
Yeah.
It was the closest I've ever gotten to a worker or a Planned Parenthood director certainly just being like, I'm sorry.
It's that secondhand embarrassment. That's we should plug the cringe episode here.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes, the most cringeworthy defenses of abortion. That's where you're kind of like, I'm almost inclined to feel bad for the Planned Parenthood lady. She's embarrassed of her own people.
I felt bad for her. I should have said, I'm sorry for you, but, you can quit. She felt bad that she brought Cousin Eddie.
Yeah.
That was basically what was going on. Okay, so don't talk to the aunties. I kind of have a good ring to it. The aunties. It's kind of hard to explain to your kids. I love this, that they don't want their own demonstrators in front of their facilities. That's just absolutely gold. That's another what to say when. Don't you think Planned Parenthood appreciates it when pro-choice people go out and publicly show their support for Planned Parenthood? Of course they do. What's wrong with you? No, they don't. It's in their training manual. So it's crazy. They're a business. Like, that's why they're telling the escorts to do that. Get the woman in. She has an abortion. We get the money and she leaves. Who cares about all this other garbage? So, okay. Number 5. This is interesting, and we can take huge advantage of this. The Planned Parenthood escorts don't actually know who's coming for an abortion. So you and I know, after spending a lot of time out at different vigils across the country, there is a tremendous difference, especially at a Planned Parenthood, in someone coming in and someone coming in for an abortion. Mm-hmm. It is night and day. Some Planned Parenthoods won't see other clients. Ours stopped, where this building stopped eventually, and it's only an abortion day. The problem they had with that is then we know it's an abortion day. And so we know everybody's there for an abortion, and the other days they're not. So they don't really like to do it, but a lot of them will just switch. Because the escort, I mean, if you're going in to pick up birth control or you're going in for a 20-week abortion, the first person you encounter from Planned Parenthood, that's like going to an event and the usher doesn't know you're there for a funeral. Yeah. And thinks you're there for a baseball game. Yeah, what section are you in?
Bride or groom.
Bride or groom. Actually, I'm here because my aunt died. I mean, it's really, really bad.
And I think it's helpful practical knowledge for us, because I've been amazed. Dan Miller, for example, we've had him on the podcast. He's saved a lot of babies. That guy has a radar on him where there's someone within 3 blocks who's having an abortion. He's spotting it and is able to reach out and offer help. They just know. They're kind of like this hive mind thing where they're able to, little gestures, little turn of the head, and they're able to kind of direct who is there for what. Planned Parenthood, they don't even know who's coming, not even just for an abortion or for something else, but they don't know who's going into Planned Parenthood, if it's an urban area or a multi use complex. They don't know who's going to Planned Parenthood and who's going to the Chili's that's, on the same block. They have no clue, and they've got to train their escorts how to try to figure it out. And ultimately, they've settled on the shotgun approach. Just, hey, are you going to Planned Parenthood today? I can tell you if I'm walking down the street on my lunch break to go to Chili's and someone, are you going to Planned Parenthood today? No, what's the matter with you? What are you talking about?
There's an overall disconnect here too with the escorts. I'm trying to think if I made a list, because I knew a lot of the escorts well here. But if I made a list, and I'm not being pro-life propaganda guy, but being objective. And I remember this, when I started, I was a teenager. I remember having a sense of this. Who, out of all their escorts, are sincere and appropriate with the clients who they're claiming to help? Mm-hmm. It is like 20% that I would say, for Planned Parenthood, this is an ideal escort. They seem like they really care. They're sweet. They go in. We had one couple out there every weekend. It was weird. We called them the makeout couple because that's all they did was make out like on the porch.
Of Planned Parenthood.
Correct. And wait for the next car. And if you were having an abortion, you would drive in and see them. And she was like sitting in his lap, and they're like sitting there and they're flirting all day and touching each other all day.
They didn't put this in unplanned?
No, they could have, I guess. Unplanned was rated R. But it was part of it, Steve, and this is the thing, is that they're so distracted. They don't care. They're just mad, and so they run out the door and they volunteer. They basically did that kind of thinking we were like the little Baptist Catholic nerds who were afraid of sex and public display of affection. So they were like making out in front of us.
And they weren't boomers, right?
No, okay. no, they weren't. They weren't. Congratulations to you boomers. But that it was awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not like stripping down or anything, but they're just like totally touchy-feely and occasionally just like kissing. They're doing abortions. And that is why all this garbage, no uterus, no opinion, don't like abortion, don't have one, all this stuff, there is one side of this that takes this seriously in all aspects. There is no goofball, silly, pro-life person at a vigil.
The escorts are not showing up with the same goal or motivation or objective as the women getting abortions. They're there to, what do we say, make a positive statement, one that demonstrates pride. That's not why a woman's coming for an abortion, like we said. Interestingly enough, I think the reason that a woman is coming for an abortion and the reason that pro-lifers are going out to the abortion facility is the same interest. The women want their problem to go away, and we want their problem to go away too, but we're going to help them make that problem go away in a way that doesn't involve killing a baby and creating more problems, using violence to try to solve problems. I think we're more in alignment with the women coming in than the escorts are.
But that shows in the saves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can meet a lot of our great volunteers, our local leaders, those who have been trained in the sidewalk outreach. They're approachable people. We have some crazies for sure, in the pro-life movement, but the majority, I mean, theirs is 20% of people that I thought, hi ma'am, how are you doing? Like the escort at the car. We had this he was a baby boomer, bless his heart, but he was all shaggy and had he looked rough. And he would be like, "You're so courageous." When the door would open, like the woman's going in for an abortion, and it's like creepy old guy telling me I'm courageous. He's not laying on the table and having an abortion.
No.
No boyfriend present, So the 20% doesn't apply to us at all. I mean, it is 98% of the people are out there, and they're approachable. And I don't mind the escorts. I think, and this goes back to Bruce Love in all seriousness, I think most of the time the escorts really hurt their own cause, and they do what we would not tolerate at 40 Days for Life. In fact, Planned Parenthood didn't tolerate it. They fired him. That came out in court as well, that he was not following their standards, and they got rid of Bruce Love. This is the goofball that made the complaint against Mark. That was great. That was a great moment in court. But we take this seriously. There's one side that cares about women, and this just shows, I think, the behavior that I've witnessed personally, much less what I've heard from 40 Days for Life, and you've heard from leaders around the world.
We've got a statement of peace, and we have not needed to put "don't make out at the vigil" in that statement of peace because nobody's considered it, at least as far as I'm aware.
No, but I'm saying the fact that sentence had to be said, I guess, is my fault. But isn't there human formation? You can be pro-abortion, and these were their like normal pro-choice people. I think they were both like, they taught at A&M or something. They were PhDs.
Oh, so these were not like, I'm 19 and I'm
No. They were in their mid-30s, late 30s. Mary Lisa and I looked at them like, we never want to be y'all. I mean, they're older. They're up
to now.
I don't know. Because it's people like that, I wonder, like, I'm sure they all went and saw Unplanned and all that. But no, they were 40. They may have been 40. She may have been in her early 40s. She looked a little older than him. But anyway, it's a
great story. I'm glad that I know it now.
Yeah, I'd recognize them on the street in 2 seconds. If you're out there, I don't know your names. Please send me your podcast at 40 Days.
We'll send you a hoodie.
We'll send you what to say when. They have to regret making out in front of us. I mean, now they're probably 60. At least 50. I mean, wouldn't you regret? There is human formation and basic manners, right? Every liberal in America, every conservative in America doesn't want somebody taking off their shoes and their socks on an airplane. Doesn't matter politics. Doesn't matter if you hate or love Trump. Doesn't matter if you want late-term abortion or you want abortion ban. We just don't want that. And on abortion days, the most serious surgery, we debate abortion. We scream about abortion. That guy wanted to go kill Kavanaugh. It's a very serious thing. Alito wants to lock up all these women. He's horrible. All the rhetoric, which definitely existed in early 2000s. Women are driving in to have abortions, 40 abortions a day at this place. And you're going to make out in the parking lot? I mean, people wonder why Roe got overturned. People wonder why the pro-life movement gets younger and better. And I'm not just trying to highlight people and say they speak for the whole movement, but these were their best, most dedicated escorts. They lasted the longest. We knew these people for like a decade. The makeout couple. I don't know their real name.
I'm mind blown about it. I'm going to be thinking about this all day.
Don't do that. That's not the point. Let's get to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a sort of a counterpoint, or I guess a corollary is the escorts don't know who's coming for an abortion, but the women coming for the abortion, they don't know who is the escorts. And so we're out there, and maybe the escorts have they call them pennies, the bright vests, whatever. Vests. And Planned Parenthood's training acknowledges that they don't necessarily, they just see someone out there and they think it might all be pro-lifers. And so our presence in many cases appears to be bigger. I think people are going to drive by and know the makeout couples, not with 40 Days for Life, but in some ways it sort of amplifies the presence of the pro-life community out there doing 40 Days for Life when you've got the escorts out there, because the women they're not aware of who is it, why are you here, why are you approaching my car?
Yeah, that's a great point, is that it makes us, we can distinguish ourselves apart from them. And that's the same with the crazy people wearing the capes and hitting pots and pans and screaming about Satan. And then you see the other people wearing halfway decent normal clothes and, like holding a Bible or praying a rosary. You may not like religious people, but they're also not wearing a cape. So it just kind of, Okay. Planned Parenthood escorts are all about choice, as long as the choice is abortion. Not that this is a surprising thing. Here is the quote. Empower the patient by saying, you don't have to take their literature.
That's inspiring. You're really empowering women.
Do you know why, Steve, they have to say that? Because women who have abortions are stupid. And they may think they have to take that literature. They have no idea. There's like a magnet that takes them over to the fence.
I think this should be, I'm going to start co-opting that word for anytime I want somebody to do something that they may or may not want to do. I'm going to empower them by asking me to give them their nachos. I'm going to empower them by asking them to, whatever I want. I'm going to empower them so they can do what I want them to do.
I want to make something clear, and I should have said it earlier. You don't have to drink that water. You don't even have to have the water bottle.
I feel empowered.
Thank you. People know we have water bottles because I have mine. You don't have to do this to yourself. You don't have to drink out of that. So I did wash that earlier, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're going to sell it on the store if you want to. Steve's Germs. No.
Not you, it's me.
It's not you, it's me. Okay. Number 8, the last revelation. Planned Parenthood is watching and photographing you. Here we go. Here's a quote. A camera is made available and photographs are discreetly taken of any new or unusual protesters. That's you.
The new and the unusual. So I guess that means anytime someone new shows up, they're taking a photo, putting it on record. I guess they don't want another Lila Rose or David Daleiden going in. I don't know what their exact goal is here, but I think that this is one where I think some people listening are going to be a little bit frightened by it. And I think it's also a reason not to be frightened, because we've got 1 million 40 Days for Life participants around the world. And other than Mark, literally, that's a 1 in a million type of scenario. They're taking the photos, but their security guards, their escorts, their escort managers, all trained. These are the circumstances in which you call the police and have them arrested. But we've got to say them in a piece. Our people aren't doing any of those things. All of their sort of like watch lists of like, if the pro-lifers do this, call the police and have their photo on hand. We don't do any of those things, so we're never giving them a reason to use that information in a way that could be harmful to anybody.
I don't think this is a big deal now. I think it was 10 years ago when you volunteered for 40 Days for Life and people were like, they're going to have my photo. It's, you know, they call it the Wall of Shame. We call it, I guess, the Hall of Fame. But it's great. Abby always made comments, we got your pictures everywhere. But now, if you go to the movies, you go to a restaurant, there's a million cameras everywhere now. I mean, people can film you in an airport. That happened to me one time. This lunatic. But it's just, there's cameras everywhere. I mean, people are filming it. It's not that Planned Parenthood does it. So I think that what we need to be on guard for is just the harassment part of it, is when they're trying to get under your skin and they're filming you and they're doing all that. And back in the day, so the same lady that offered me a ride home because it was raining so bad, to show that positive side of her, there was a not so positive side of her. She would always come out with like the old school Canon camera, you know, pre-iPhone, where it's like, hey, that's really a nice camera. And she would just come out and get right in front of Mary Lisa and I and take our photo when we were standing together. So we got to the point where we'd start posing, like the prom photo. And so we just see it. We were like, and she'd smile. And even one time she was like, cute. Like, it's like meant to, like, that's a good photo. Oh, send it to us. You know, but it was just one of those, I think nowadays people are expected to be filmed, certainly with what we do. What I got out of this is I would love to hear Planned Parenthood's definition. I get new protester, an unusual protester. Because I have my...
He's wearing a cape. That's the unusual part.
He's wearing a cape. And I don't want anybody at a 40 Days for Life vigil wearing a cape. Is that clear? I don't. So, no capes. Don't give me Batman and Superman. Then you're even creepier if you're one of those people. So, but I know what unusual pro-life person looks like. And I hope our leader takes a photo of him. If you look unusual and you're like, I'm on your side, you know, then probably need to get a photo of you. But that hardly ever happens. I'm just interested in like unusual. I just always picture a nun. They're out there taking a picture of some poor Carmelite.
Yeah, I guess that could be the case. Was it the Amish or something? I don't know what those people are.
I don't know what those people are. Look, they got the rosary.
It's a habit, not a cape.
Yeah, they got the rosary that could, you know, pull up the Titanic from the bottom of the Atlantic. So, okay. Any final considerations? We covered a lot. This is a little bit of a lighthearted episode, but to me, it shows the impact that you're having. It shows the impact of 40 Days for Life, and it shows the incompetency of Planned Parenthood and their training. This is the training. These are the highlights. You can go read the whole manual if you want. There's just not a lot of there.
And this ultimately, I think this is what we're talking about right now is proof positive of why the abortion industry in the U.S. and around the world wants buffer zones so desperately.
Absolutely.
Because the only way to deal with this is to just keep us away. Their program isn't working. Their program isn't any good. Abortion isn't any good. And they know that when we show up, the no-show rate for abortions goes up to as high as 75%, and the only way to deal with that is to keep us as far away as possible. Now, even then, we've got locations in the UK where they've got buffer zones, and they're saving lives from, 300 yards or meters, rather, away. So even then, God triumphs over it. But if you get escorts that show up at your clinic, your Planned Parenthood facility, don't be discouraged. Take it as a compliment. I think if they do anything, it's more the intimidation factor that you were just talking about. They're trying to get under your skin, make you feel like you might be doing something wrong, but it's not going to stop a woman from choosing life if you're there to empower her.
And you got to walk away. You can't let them get under your skin. They're going to try to do that. I think one of the encouraging things for the viewer or the listener is you're just not going to see these people a lot in the future. It's high turnover. I've given books to escorts. I've had a lot of conversations with escorts, but all of them, they just seem very short term, except for that one couple. But other than that, they're not in it for the long haul. And it's hot or it's cold. And, it's a little controversial.
There's a new Netflix special out.
Yeah. And so, just to recap, these are the 8 revelations from Planned Parenthood's escort training, courtesy of Mark Houck's trial and discovery. Number 1, Planned Parenthood's escort training isn't very professional. Number 2, Planned Parenthood acknowledges that abortion is traumatic. Number 3, Planned Parenthood doesn't want its escorts to talk to you. Number 4, Planned Parenthood doesn't want pro-abortion demonstrators in front of its facilities. Number 5, Planned Parenthood escorts don't know who is coming in for an abortion. Number 6, and Planned Parenthood clients don't know who's who. Number 7, Planned Parenthood's escorts are all about choice as long as the choice is abortion. Number 8, Planned Parenthood is watching and taking photos of you. So, you don't like your engagement photos? You don't like your yearbook photo? Ask him for the pictures. Ask him for the... Took Mark a lot of work to get the pictures of himself. He had to go to court. Don't do that.
Trying to find a way to make a connection between these photos and the Chinese spy balloon. We haven't covered that
yet.
Yeah,
we haven't covered that. What else we didn't cover, and this is shameful as we wrap this podcast up, and we owe just a huge apology to our listeners. We have been building up and acknowledging that St. Patrick's Day is coming on March the 17th. Today, that this podcast comes out March the 14th, and we got so tied up with Bucky, we forgot about St. Patrick, so who would probably be friends. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Let us model St. Patrick, who overcame so much persecution, was thrown out of Ireland, went to prison, came back, and evangelized Ireland. We need him to come back and evangelize Ireland, all of Europe, and parts of America, most of America. But what a great Christian missionary for the gospel. And I know St. Patrick's Day gets lost and it can be goofy things, green beer and leprechauns and all that garbage. He was a phenomenal saint and Christian missionary who absolutely believed in the gospel and drove paganism out of Ireland and converted that country. It's really one of the greatest stories in the history of Western civilization. I, of course, come with zero bias, but God bless St. Patrick. And we'll put it on the screen. Here is St. Patrick's grave. From my visit there, St. Bridget is buried next to him. So that's it. You convert a whole country. This is what you get. This is just a simple little stone there. So it's like Patrick was here, basically. Might as well be written on there. So County Down, we went there. Good night. I don't know. Before COVID, one of my 40 days trips to England, and went over to Ireland and saw St. Patrick. So happy St. Patrick's Day. Please go to 40daysforlife.com. 604 locations. Know that we are winning. Hopefully this podcast gave you more confidence in that. We are winning in the grassroots. Be nice to your escorts. Pray for them in private. Laugh at them. And know that anybody who is escorting at an abortion facility could easily be leading a 40 Days for Life campaign soon after. We have seen crazier conversions. So do pray for them, do love them, and for the most part, ignore them. So thank you. Thank you, Steve. And please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time.